Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 27th, 2021 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are beginning our series of meetings in preparation for the fiscal year 22 budget, meeting with department heads. Tonight we'll be meeting with the Assessors Department. We have Yolanta Briffett with us. We'll be meeting with the Town Clerk's Office, the Planning Board, and the Police Department, and representatives for those departments will be joining us during the call. We are meeting once again on Zoom. And signs are pointing towards at some point in the future, not necessarily soon, but at least in the future, us meeting again in person. So that's a good thing. Anyway, we can get started. Yolanta, welcome. We're very glad to have you with us. You are kicking off the series of department head meetings this year. You get to be first. It's quite the honor.
Thank you. That's great. I just want to say hello, and I hope everyone is doing well. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
And do you guys have my budget in front of you?
I will call it up on the screen share. Hang on a second.
Okay.
All right. There we go.
Okay, so here's my mid-level budget. The first portion is the salaries. There are some increases based on the step and the grade. And there is some leave incentive buyback based that Joe doesn't carry the town insurance. And then the expenses, are the same as last year. We no longer have advertising because we can advertise now online based on the Department of Revenue regulation. Do you have any questions on anything? I mean, there's some travel. I don't know how much travel I will be doing for the conferences this year based on the COVID, but I would like to keep that money in there just in case, because that's how I get my credits.
Anyone have questions?
Mine's more just about the format. So is the left column of numbers is the previous year, and then the right is the current request for the next year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. The reason I was curious is because, like you said, they're all the same, and I was confused. But, if they were different, it would have made more sense to me.
Yeah,
I think the only difference that I think Yolanta has is in the salary, and as she explained, that's steps.
Exactly. Yep.
Contractual increases.
Contractual. Yep.
And then just go ahead, Chris.
Just go ahead.
What's the big expense number, the other prof and technical budget?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. What did you ask?
Yeah, there's a 57,900. Just what's that for?
That is all for vendors. We have Vision Government Solutions, who helps us with the valuation of real property. We have Real Estate Research that helps us with the personal property. Then we get maps and deeds, and we also get Marshall and Swift reports.
Okay.
So that's a big one, but it's well earned.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And then my only question was on the format too. So what, like, looking at that same item, right? What does that negative 37,000 represent?
Maybe Sue can answer that, because we used to.
That's what's expended to date.
Oh, okay.
That was going to be my guess. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
So some of the, a lot of that hasn't been expended this year because of COVID, I assume, any travel.
I think we're what, only seven months into the fiscal year, so.
But a lot of the Zoom
37 out of 57 is definitely more than 7/12. So
Yeah, but a lot of the Zoom meetings, sometimes they charge for it as well, so.
No, but I see a lot of zero expense in several of the items, but I assume that's just because,
Education and training, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
right up here.
Yeah,
but even postage is very low compared to what was budgeted. That's not a bad thing. It's just,
no, it's not.
Yeah, as the finance committee, I think we can say anytime you're spending under budget, we're happy about that.
right, but do we need to keep the same budget for the next year if you didn't need to spend it this year? That's,
I think you're finding that the spending of this year is a lot different than in the past years because of what's going on with COVID. So I would suggest that if it's level number, that you use the level number there. So if we do open up for business as you know, a regular business that we've had in the past, that we're not cutting the feed off of the departments.
I agree.
what about postage? That's different?
Well, we
not
have
talking
to
big
fill out
numbers.
all the exemptions, the income and expense statements, the 3 ABC requests. Our postage is the same.
Yeah, and right now what they're doing is they're starting to take in their requests for exemptions and stuff. They have until what is it, February 1st, Yolanta? And then they have to respond to these people. So it might be cyclical rather than
Okay,
you know, throughout the year.
okay,
And a lot of times now we have to do it postmarked. It has to be postmarked by the post office. What's the thing I'm looking? Yeah, it has to be postmarked. Yeah.
okay. All right, yeah.
My apologies for messing up. I'm trying to expand a window and
Is there more work right now for this, or is there less work?
Or what?
What you're doing?
It's the
Oh,
same. It's just the traffic
same.
inside the traffic inside the town hall is reduced, but it's
Yeah.
the same work.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, so people just mail stuff in now instead of previous where they come in and drop everything off?
No, people are making appointments. They're coming out to see me. Right now, we are in the abatement process, and like Sue said, February 1st is the deadline. I have a lot of applications coming in by mail, and a lot of people are dropping them off at the tax office, or they scheduling an appointment with me. But they also requesting that I go out and inspect their home.
And why are they doing
And why they what? I'm sorry.
that? Why are they requesting for you to do that?
Because when you file for an abatement, you have to go inspect a home before you can make a recommendation to the board whether it warrants an abatement or not. A lot of times people will not take out a permit and they will finish a basement or sunroom or something like that where we don't have that on our records. So I have to go out and inspect the property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
any other questions for Yolanta? All right, sounds like we're out of questions for you. Yolanta, thank you very much for your time. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You
Thank
guys
you.
have a great year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Hey, Matt, just a question before we get to the next one, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So last year, we had challenged people to consider a 10% reduction, and then we got lucky and we didn't have to, and then we ended up asking, they ended up using the money that we thought they couldn't use. Do we have any foresight into the next year? Is it going to be as lucky as it was the previous year or worse?
So
I think-
Scott and Sue, sorry, Yolanta, to jump in, Scott and Sue or Yolanta, I don't know if we have any kind of feel on what the state budget is going to be like. I know that as of our last meeting, we said that things like the meals, the local meals tax, the excise tax were definitely trending lower than what we said. But I know that we said that we were seeing more people starting to pay their property tax that had either asked for a pause or some sort of leniency on paying their property tax during the worst of COVID. Where do we stand at right now as far as projecting revenue?
You want me to get that?
Well, right now, I mean, as far as collections we're down, obviously. So revenue from last year and our projections are low, and we do hope that it picks up. I do expect, right now, because of, we didn't hit our marks last year on revenue, we have to project it, lower going into next year. I do think we're going to do better. I think we'll see a resurgence. Obviously, as people get, vaccinated, I think after July, we will see, our meals tax will pick up. Things like that will pick up. We're anticipating having some, or at least one of the marijuana stores online, maybe two. So we anticipate revenue there. The preliminary governor's budget was filed today. There's slight increases, but that doesn't mean anything. It's too preliminary. To see, I think if anything, maybe that stays level with what we had last year, but there's nothing miraculous here. But as you know, the governor's message was, he was putting forward a budget that had those increases and keeping their rainy day fund intact, which I think we did a great job at last year. You made some cuts going into the annual. You put a lot of money into reserves. We didn't have to touch it. Most communities did. We actually had the conversation where we anticipated we may have to touch it at some point this year or going into the next annual budget. I don't anticipate that at this point. Sue's worked with the department heads. They've had a couple of rounds and they've all been really good about paring down their budgets. We put a spending freeze in last year. They were really good about that. And again, I think you see that here is that, they're being cautious with their spending, all of them, which will help us with free cash going into next year. So, yeah, so, I mean, it's early, it's January. We just kind of took our first big run at this. And like I said, the state numbers, they look optimistic, but, that budget can get beat up by the legislature too. Does that answer?
I think it does, Joe. So
Yeah, it does to me, definitely. Yeah. Yep. I'm just curious because I hate to go too far and then realize we have to make cuts, but it sounds like it's something they're trying to get things pretty level, and that's good to hear.
Yep. And just as a point of clarification, Joe, we did have the departments go back expecting a 10% decrease in state aid, and that was what was in the final passed budget, was the 10% decrease from state aid. We didn't do a 10% decrease across the board. It was state aid we specifically looked at. Chris had run numbers based on the previous couple of downturns in the economy and where state aid came in those. And the 10% was sort of on the higher side of where it would have, like the amount that it would have dropped. So we did do that. When state aid came in level, that was when we went to special town meeting to use some of that money that came in, that 10% more than we expected, essentially. And some of it was used to cover for local revenue that wasn't coming in, but not all of it as we saw. So just to clarify where we were there. And Scott, just a point of clarification from me from what you were saying. We do not think that we're going to need to go into either reserve fund or stabilization to make ends meet for the current year budget.
Well,
At this, at this time, I know
At
everything
this
is
time,
subject to change.
we're hoping to not, but it's early, obviously. Some of the big issues coming are obviously what happens with our COVID CARES Act refund.
Yep.
If if we run into problems, or if we run into extra expenses associated with that. I think we did put a healthy amount into your reserves.
Yep.
Because we did anticipate there could be overages in that trash fees too. So that, otherwise, I think, yeah, we're hoping, we're cautiously optimistic.
Good.
Question.
Barbara?
Scott, did you ask departments to come up with a level service, level funded budget? The department?
The last round, I think, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but we asked them for a level funded.
Level funded.
Yeah, so
Yolanda-
basically, mostly for contractual increases and then anything really, major that we needed. But, they always hit us in that very first round, with a wish list, which is appropriate because it is incumbent upon them to let us know what they actually really need. And even if we can't do it, or if we have to go for that other round, we do want to know what's on their mind, what their long-term thoughts are.
So while Yolanda's still here, I wanted to ask Yolanda, what were there things that you felt that you really needed but weren't able to put in your budget?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I don't see that Leanne has joined. Are we ready to move on to town clerk? Oh, Sue, you're on mute. Still on mute.
So is there anything there with a C? Because she said she was just going to call in by her phone.
Okay. I don't think we need her to see anything, so I think that'll be fine. Does anyone feel like they absolutely positively have to see Leanne's face? As much as we love Leanne and want to see her, I think we can deal with her being on the phone.
All right, good to see you guys. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Hi,
Yolanda.
Yolanda. Thank you so much again for coming. All right, I am going to share screen again to the town clerk budget.
Is Liz on?
Liz is not on yet either. And Chris Cotter is also not on yet. So we have.
She says
None
she's
of-
waiting her turn. Leanne says she's waiting her turn. But
I'm looking and I don't have a request.
she
so-
says she's logged in several times.
Huh.
She didn't go to that
Okay.
old link.
Yeah, let me see. Is it, what was it, December 12th?
Yeah,
December 16th, I think.
January 16th.
I can email her the link again if she needs me to.
Okay, if you could.
Yep.
Probably need to do the same thing to Liz.
And maybe Chief Cutter, Deputy Chief Cutter,
Yes.
just in case.
And they say Zoom is just like being there.
You went dark, man.
Right, email sent. Actually, waiting my 5-second undo window on Google. Now it's sent. I usually like that Google gives me that grace period to pull it back if I forgot something or messed up something. Trying to get something out quickly, it's less useful. All right, there's Liz. Nope, that's the wrong button. To our Abington Cam host, you can ignore my request for you to unmute. That was not what I was trying to press. And to those watching at home, I actually do work in technology. Hi, Liz.
You want to go ahead with Liz because Leanne's still having a little problem.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Let me go back to sharing. Get Liz's budget up. I'll keep watching for Leanne while we're doing that. All right. Town clerk, town clerk, town clerk.
Yeah.
There we go. Planning board. Liz Shea, welcome. Oh, Liz Shea's plant, welcome.
I'm here.
Thank you so much for joining us, Liz.
Happy to do it.
Do you need us to go around and do introductions or?
No, that's okay. I'm Liz.
Hi,
Work for
Liz.
the planning board. Nice to see everybody.
Good to see you too. Glad to have you here.
So glad to be here. I haven't done this with you guys in this format, so you tell me what you need.
So typically what we'll do is if you have any sort of upfront stuff that you feel like you either need or want to talk about right away, you can kind of launch right into that. And then if you want to go through line by line on the budget after that.
Okay.
And if you don't have any upfront stuff, then no worries there either. You can just go right into the budget.
Yeah, there's only a couple of things. So the salary has increased, and that's actually a combination of a couple of things. We were talking about making my position an assistant town planner position, which is more reflective of the work I'm actually doing. I'd be happy to give you guys examples of that if you want. And then the other thing was the $3,000 in advertising, which will probably go back to $1,000 or $1,500. I hope to get the planning board to make a decision on what they want to do with the zoning articles that were remanded back to them at the town meeting. We do have to do one zoning article this year, which is the watershed, Cape Cod watershed. We have to adopt the FEMA maps that they've changed. And they've come up with a new model bylaw, which town council has already drafted. So we're all set. We just need to go to a town meeting and adopt it, but it needs to be done, I think, by June. There's a date in June it needs to be done by. So those are my only two upfront things. Everything else was, should have been level funded.
So my first question is about the town planner that got kind of set aside last year. Are we not, we're not considering that right now, or?
I don't think we can do it this year. What they, like, if you wanted to have a full planner in here, and only because it's just, conceptually what I'm trying to do, because I think it's the only way to really afford it, is to try and regionalize it with, it might be with Whitman and or Rockland.
So those towns don't have a planner either?
No, they don't.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a really, and it's an important position. And, we're lucky, I think, as Liz will probably explain a little more in a minute, that a lot of the duties that she's picked up on are the duties that, you would typically have a planner do. It wouldn't be an administrative assistant do, looking into grant opportunities and filling out grant applications and pursuing things like that. So one of my big concern is now that Route 18's a 4-lane highway going through the town, not having a planner is not a good position to be in, but it's just, it's just a sign of the times that we're going through. I don't know that, and we may revisit this as the budget cycle goes through, but right now I don't know that we can, put that back in at what it was.
Okay.
Scott, I apologize for making you backtrack. What were the towns you were talking to? I'm just trying to keep my notes up.
Rockland and Whitman, and only because, geographically, it makes sense, and they're where they're both fed off of Route 18, and so with the effects of Route 18, Rockland also shares a bit of access with the base, and what's going to happen as that perhaps there may be some rezoning that comes up with the new developer that's in there now. So, and it's interesting because they just appointed a town administrator in Whitman, a new town administrator. And the one in Rockland, I think he started maybe the year before I did. So it's sort of all three of us are looking around saying, I think we all came from communities that had a robust planning department. So we're kind of looking at the whole, the gap that you have by not having, sort of a full-time or someone to pursue those things. And in our case, we've been luckier than they are on those two towns, because Liz actually has picked up the ball on a lot of that, where they don't even have an administrative assistant or an assistant planner or anything. I don't know how they do it, because you get one 40B and that's or you get one big development and that's just a huge time vacuum.
Meanwhile, our salary for this department's gone from 20,000 in 20 to 30,000 last year to 38,000 this year.
In FY20 it was?
FY20, I have in the budget for FY20, it was 20,000.
There were, so and this is going back now a couple of years, I think my salary, I got a salary increase, which was not included in the budget, and it wasn't a large salary increase. It was just a couple of incremental ones.
Yeah.
But didn't get included. Like one was a mid-year bump, I think of $1,000 or $2,000. I don't remember exactly. And the other one didn't get included. So those got accounted for at the end of the year in transfers.
Okay.
And then the budget went up. So that's what happened. If you want that, I can certainly get that information from you for you.
I'm just making an observation.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yep.
Liz, if you remember too, during that time period, you switched some of your hours from the library to the town hall so you could
Yes.
pick up those planning things. So she went from whatever her hours were to an additional 4 hours a week at the town hall instead of the library.
Yep. Thank you, Sue. I forgot that.
I was going to say, I was pretty sure that we had shifted some hours from one department to planning.
Yeah.
But now it's up again this year. So if that makes sense, that's fine. I just, it's up, whatever that percentage is. Over, it's like 25%.
And that increases because of the change in adding assistant town planner position?
No, we haven't had a town planner since 2009. And I was doing a portion of that work at 15 hours a week. And I think it was a year ago that it just was really overwhelming. And I had 5 hours. I work at the library as well. That might be helpful to know. And I gave up 5 hours at the library and got an additional 5 hours at town hall. When I first started back in the dark ages, and I mean that literally, I've been there 18 years now, that position was 19 hours. And then in 2003, 4, somewhere around there, we had a bad budget year. We got the state monies were cut halfway through the year. And they took 4.5 or 4 hours away from that position at that time. And it never got restored until last year. So legitimately, probably a good 10 or 15 years, that position went from 19 to 15 hours. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
And didn't come back until last year.
Right, right.
Any other questions?
Now, what's so this year it's going to go up another 5 hours?
No additional hours. I work 21 hours at the library and then 19 at town hall, so that's 40 hours.
Oh.
I can't legally work more than that.
Quality of work.
Yeah, the request is based on the actual work that's being performed as opposed to, it's outside the scope of what we would typically have as an administrative assistant.
Okay.
And it's well beyond that when you get into, like I said, pursuing grant opportunities, which is a huge thing that, it's amazing how many of them are out there. And to be quite honest with you, I don't have time to even consider most of them. And there was, I think it was yesterday, I don't know, Liz, I think it was yesterday or maybe it was today that there was, a conference call and a webinar on new and the latest round of grant opportunities. And I was unable to attend it. So luckily, Liz was able to pay, go in, deal with it, know what's going on and understand, what they were talking about.
That's what I meant, but the salary increases because they're changing.
Because of the work being done.
Because of the work that I'm already doing.
Right.
Last year during COVID, I led a team of department heads and other some residents, and we applied for and received a municipal vulnerability preparedness grant. And we had to go through a bunch of exercises, which in the middle of COVID was not the easiest thing to do, but we have been designated a municipal vulnerability preparedness community, which makes us now eligible for the action grants. Those are getting rolled out in the spring. I received an email, I think last week. Some of that would be, is more like a DPW type, like grant application, like for dams, to repair dams, like the bridge that I think at
The Central
Street that we just got approved money for at town meeting. Some of that stuff would be eligible for grant opportunities with the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. So we're waiting to see when that round opens. I did attend that webinar today, which looks very exciting actually for the town. They're sort of rolling the grants. I don't want to say they're rolling them together. They're keeping them separate, but there's going to be like one portal to apply for all these grants. And before you actually apply, you can, they're encouraging everybody to do, I'm just going to, for a simple sake, call it the pre-grant application. And a bunch of different state level departments will look at it and tell us whether it's a go, whether it's not a go this year, but maybe a go next year, or maybe you need some more work on that. Here's a grant for technical assistance you can apply for, that kind of stuff. So that was great. I'm gonna meet with the town manager tomorrow to see, the town needs to prioritize what they feel is important so that we can apply for some of this stuff. And they've sort of centralized it for us. So I guess I hope we can sort of send them a list and say, hey, what's good? What are we good to do? So.
Nice.
I know you don't want me to get into the, everybody calling about this and the other thing. They're filling in my detention basin. There's water running on my property. You don't need to hear any of that, right?
All fun stuff.
We had to go issue a cease and desist order the other day, so
yeah,
it's beyond the scope of
good Lord,
administrative assistant at that point. when you're doing enforcement.
Ugly, ugly, ugly. So I think that's it. Like I said, everything else was level funded. The only thing that I'm not sure of is the advertising costs, and that will be depending on what the planning board decides to do with the zoning articles from last year, and if there's anything else they want to address this year to amend any zoning.
Anyone have other questions for Liz? All right, Liz, thank you so much for your time. It was great to have you here with us.
Thank you. It was
definitely
great to be here.
appreciate
You
it.
guys have a good night.
Thank you,
Okay.
Liz.
You too.
Too.
Take care.
Thanks.
Sue, I'll start with your unmute, and then I will go to, have you heard from Leanne again?
Leanne is trying, to get on, but for whatever reason, she's having some
Let me-
technical difficulties.
I'm going to stop sharing again so I can see better. And let me just look real quick and see if I can get the phone number itself for her.
So rather than the Zoom, I sent her the actual meeting ID and passcode. So that was just 2 minutes ago. So see what we can do there.
I found it easier a couple times to go on just the website and then do what Sue's saying.
Yeah, I had to do that for a meeting earlier this week.
Yeah, sometimes when you click the link, I don't know if it's like software or whatever you're running in the background. I don't know what it is, but
I got Sue on here twice.
Oh, that's because I tried to check in from my phone to see what she was missing.
Your phone might still be connected.
Yeah, I'm going to try emailing her the variety of phone numbers that Zoom gives you.
All right, she said, go ahead and move on. She'll reschedule for another night. She says she's been trying since 6:55 and she's frustrated.
So I just sent her the phone number if she wants to
All
give
right,
that
let's see
one-
what she
give
does.
that one last try and tell her we're sorry.
The police are at 8, is that right?
Yes, and I did get an email from Deputy Chief Cotter who said that he can hop on early if we need to, but he was planning on being on around 8.
Okay.
So if the phone number doesn't work for Leanne, then I'll shoot him an email and let him know we're ready.
What's he biting?
You're not on mute now.
All right. Another message sent. So we'll see who's able to get on first. I'm watching the participant list to admit anyone as they pop up. In the meanwhile, do we have any updates on free cash or anything like that? Since we have a quick moment. Or updates on CARES Act reimbursement, anything.
So free cash and the Schedule A is in the hands of the DOR as of yesterday.
All right.
And The CARES Act reimbursement, we have about, I want to say about $380,000 that we have not earmarked for something out of the 2.5 that they assessed for us. Although we did hear that they're possibly going to, it's not a definite, might get more funding from the government, but it's not a definite.
So just going back to our previous meeting, does that CARES Act money kind of make the request that Chief Dunham had null and void, or is that still kind of on the table?
I think it's still kind of on the table. We're going through the CARES Act money first, and then if we need to use that money, we're gonna go in that direction, but with the turnout that we had today, with staffing and for the vaccinations and stuff, it's significant, the amount of people that they have there to try to maintain order, make sure that the vaccines are safe, and, you know, register people. There was quite a few people there that we need to pay for, so.
Yeah,
And-
the the interesting part of it is, I mean, we can, deficit up to this certain point that we know that we have.
Hello.
But beyond that, we'll have a lot more expenses associated with the actual administration of the vaccine and setting up these clinics, that we're expecting further reimbursement to come from FEMA. And hopefully maybe some more from CARES Act, but if we're looking for reimbursement from it may be, who knows how far down the road. FEMA is not the quickest to pay. So that could become an issue that we're paying, because we have to, we've got staff that we're going to be paying, to set up these vaccination sites. So, I think we'll get most of that money back, but we may have to lay it out in the beginning. And like I said, the CARES Act is like Sue said, there's only a few $100,000 left in there. So we're holding that and not trying to avoid using it for anything other than these vaccination sites at this point. But a testing issue could come up where we may get concerned because we have so much staff at a site, or the staff that, or the folks that we need to set up the site could be a close contact, and we have to test a good amount of them and get a quick answer. So
What vaccine did we get?
the Moderna, I'm not, I know they gave out over 113, I think, vaccinations today. I'm not sure what he did to date, but just today alone, I know on Monday, he will be down at the senior center, setting up and trying to do, the 75 and over crowd, and then, morphing into a 65 and over crowd.
But we don't know how many we received.
So they come out of Brockton Hospital, and I think, I want to say that there could be as many as 500 there, but Marty has a setup that the most of the area towns are looking at and sort of modeling off of, and they're very pleased with the fact that he's getting it out and getting it into people's arms as quickly as possible. So he's actually getting, I don't want to say any, they're taking very good care of him. As fast as he asks for more, they're getting more to him. But, at some point, Brockton Hospital is going to run out of it too, unless the feds or the state are getting it down. So right now, there's not a problem for us and for this area, but my thoughts are in the conversation. What's that?
A lot of other towns haven't started it yet either. And so if they're going to be getting their supply from the same place, that might.
Yeah, well, I know Whitman has started it and they're getting it, and sort of, we're getting it out of Brockton Hospital. So there's a certain area that's connected through Brockton Hospital. Some of the other areas are getting it direct. depending on how they set up. And we, looked into regionalizing with some of the other communities to do that. But, we found it better to do it this way. That being said, I think once we start getting into the other phases, if there is a problem with delivery, that's where you're going to see it, is when you get into, obviously, these phase 2B, where, you're doing the K through 12 teachers, and you're, then getting into frontline workers and grocery store workers and people who are involved in the food transportation. I mean, your numbers are going to jump dramatically.
Right.
People who are going to be looking for the vaccination. So I think that's when we start seeing, maybe the log jam, and let's hope not.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
So far, so good, though.
Yeah. So far, better than good. I mean, I can't say anybody who went down there or saw any of it today, they were doing an amazing job, and everybody was done
great to hear.
Safely.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
All right. And we do have our Deputy Police Chief, Chris Cotter, who has joined us. Chris, we appreciate your flexibility hopping on here a little early.
No problem.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go
Before
ahead,
we
Bob. Go ahead.
Did you catch the guy the other night that was running through backyards near my neighbor?
No, I don't think they finally got him.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. There was around here, and
Definitely a hubbub, that's for sure.
Hubbub, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, do you want me to begin here, or is...
Yeah, if you want to just kind of take the lead and as we were saying with the other department representatives that were on earlier, go through any stuff that you want to say off the top, and then go to we'll kind of share the line by line budget, and you can kind of walk us through there. But anything you want to lead with, the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. So obviously, I've sat with some of you guys in years past as the chief went through it, but just bear with me a little bit where it's the first time I'm doing the whole. But what I would, and I may jump around a little bit, some of the information you have that was prepared in Vadar, I didn't get a chance to update that. So some of my numbers may not jive with your numbers, but I will point them out as we go through it. Mm-hmm. Basically, the budget in a nutshell, there's a couple options for us here at the police department as we begin to restructure, and I'll go over that. But basically, the majority of the increases are contractual, and outside of that, I told Sue had asked us to all of us to look at this, to sharpen our pencils, I think it was, as her email was. So the chief had kind of prepared the outline of the budget before he had left, and then I got the opportunity to go back in and kind of take another look at the budget, and if there was anywhere I felt that I could cut things, I did do that. So I think it might. One thing I did want to touch upon was, and I don't know exactly how it all plays out, but I know that the town was there was funds appropriated to assist in the buyout of Chief Majewski's package when he left. So $68,000 was put on town meeting for that, and that was approved. Currently, my anticipation and the way we've been planning this from when Chief Majewski was first going to leave was to try to mitigate that buyout as much as we could. And so with that 68,000, I really would only be looking at, unless the wheels fell off somewhere between now and June 30th, but I really would only be looking at funding that last payment of his buyout in the fiscal year we're talking about now. So it would leave a balance of basically $41,744 in that transfer. So I don't exactly know how that works or where that goes from there, but just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that I don't anticipate using that. And so that can go back into the general fund, however way that works.
Maybe Sue or Scott could touch on that real quick on what we expect for that last bit.
Are you saying that there'll be a leftover amount in your budget of 40,000 in the salaries?
Yeah, that's correct,
Yeah.
Scott. So I don't anticipate using any of that money for this fiscal year. Chief Majensky, there's one payout to be paid on August 31st for approximately 26,000 in next year's budget. So I would only be looking to take care of that payout using that 68,000. So that would leave 41,000.
Yeah, so that would end up, I mean, either, you know, something could happen between now and the end of the year where we would end up using it. You know, we're doing some negotiations and stuff anyways, but it certainly could, would otherwise turn into free cash going into next year.
Okay. So,
But the fact that it was a warrant article, it does definitely need to be reassigned to a different purpose, or it has to be closed out.
Right.
Well, the purpose being not the chief's salary
Right, but at town meeting.
at town meeting.
Yes.
Right. So we would need an article at special town meeting or annual town meeting to put that back into the general fund or put it to some other purpose. As we saw, for example, with the senior center paving article where we reappropriated some of the money from somewhere else. So,
okay.
sorry for the interruption, Chris.
No. Thank you. So with that, and I'll touch upon my the way I have it broken out as personal services. There was an increase of 133,102.71, and as I stated, the majority. Oh, okay. If we want to go down this, I can do it this way as well.
I figured I'd call it up. So if you wanted me to reference something, I can scroll to it. So
okay,
you can just keep going.
All right. So there would be 100. So there would be 133,102 increase in personal services, and a reduction of 18,925 in expenses, and that would leave me with a total increase of 114,177.71. Now, with that is a fully funded budget. With that increase of 114,000. And so I will just go down, Matt, if you wanted to just bring me back to the beginning of that police salaries budget appropriation. Yeah, so that number 26,34,262, that number would change to 26,48092. So there'd be an increase of 13,830.2 for that line item. And I'll as we go down through, well, I guess I'll get to it now. There's a couple things during this current fiscal year. The chief and with the town manager, they took away. We had 31 positions, and ultimately with the 31 positions was identified as where we should be as far as the department. And the management study that the department went through this year identified that we were right where we needed to be with 31 positions. But due to the unforeseen cash problems this year, we lost one of those positions that we've still have not filled. So we're down to 30 positions now. When I talk about an increase in the budget of 114,177, that includes refunding that 31st position. So that would bring us up to a total of 31 spots. We also have been talking between myself and Scott about the possibility of regionalizing our dispatch operations with Holbrook and Holbrook's Regional Dispatch Center. So with that, there are a couple things that would go on with the budget, and just trying to see the so that number that we increased to 20, that I increased to 26,4 264,8092.2. That includes being able to fund some desk offices here at the station if we transferred over to the regional dispatch center. Now, with that said, it would be my position that if we were able to fund the dispatch personnel here at the station, and we move forward with that regional dispatch, that 31st position I wouldn't need anymore. I would gain some boots on the ground per se by allowing us to go over to Holbrook and staff our desk here with just some desk offices that are doing minimal tasks, answering phones, greeting people at the door, directing phone calls, and doing some basic data entry here at the desk for the department. So with the budget that I'm presenting includes as well for me to be able to staff those positions all 24 hours a day. So when I get to the bottom line figure of that 114,177, if I would be able and perfectly acceptable to remove one full-time officer's position from that, which would be a reduction of 61,984. So it would dramatically bring the cost of that of the total budget down substantially. That's 61,000. So I will go through the police salaries and wages. Like I said, it did go up 13,830. And then if we go down the list, Matt, and we'll go to, I'll start taking basically all the salary and wages are contractual. There's no difference there, as I've tried to explain some of the options for personnel. So I will start with the overtime budget, and the thought was our overtime budget is a little low from what I can tell. We haven't we've been spending a little bit more than what we've had appropriated in that line item, and with that, we've come up with an $18,000 increase in overtime to try to get us more in line to what we're spending in that overtime budget. And I anticipate moving forward in this fiscal year approaching that overtime is going to be even more important for me as I begin to increase some of the positions, specialty positions in the department. I fully hope to have at least 2 detectives working, a detective sergeant and a detective patrolman, as well as maybe even being able to get a 3rd detective in there working. With that, I can envision that we're going to see a little bit of an increase in overtime, handling some of the cases that they do. The other thing is there's just some other things that are going on in the department with the restructuring and things like that I see that increase is needed in the overtime line item.
And Chris, if I can just, jump in for 1 second, just so everybody knows that, and perhaps you already do, but a lot of what he's talking about and a lot of these different changes are because of the management study that we did, that we decided to adopt, and the changes that, the deputy's been really good about putting into effect and lining it up to follow along with that study.
So I just had a question. The overtime isn't so much anymore because you had a period of time where you were using the overtime to, because we didn't have the manpower. So do you find that that's not as much an issue anymore?
Overtime is definitely not an issue as it was in years past. We obviously struggled with staffing back, 2 or 3 years ago. We're up to, a good level now. Like I said, although I have that one position that we lost, we still have 30 positions, and I have the majority of those filled. Obviously, I do have one that's not filled right now, that I'm just waiting on filling. But yeah, with the increased number of offices here, some of the overtime and expenditures have been less. But
So are all
ahead.
30 officers working?
I'm sorry.
Are all 30 officers working?
No, I have the chief's position currently is out of the office. I have an officer that's on extended military leave, and I have an officer that is, I have 2 officers that are pending academy training. And then I have one position that Sergeant Sweeney, going to be a great loss for the department with his experience, but he is retiring. His last day will be tomorrow. So I will have another spot that I will not have a body working in.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Russ.
I wanted to ask a little bit about, and forgive me for asking a little bit late, but while we're kind of on the subject, Chief, could you explain maybe pros and cons for like operational pros and cons for us going into the shared dispatch service with Holbrook, and then what was said about that particular, like that dispatch change, if that was addressed in the management study, and what the management study said about that, and then what what the department's thoughts are, whether that, whether we want to do that or not, please.
Sure. I mean, operationally, I think it's only a benefit to my department and to the residents here in Abington. We're currently operating on a quasi-regional system now. All our 911 wireless calls, which are the majority of our emergency calls, those are already going to Holbrook, and they've been going to Holbrook for the last couple of years. So, but when you look at the procedure, now a 911 call goes to Holbrook. Holbrook now then takes the call, takes the information, tries to transfer the call over to us, and then we're dispatching from our department here. But with that becomes a lot of redundancy. There's also we've had situations where we've lost the caller. Sometimes the callers in these emergency situations are so ramped up as far as what their situation is going on that they disconnect from between the transfer from Holbrook to us. So I can only see an improvement on that end of it. I think it's the way it's working now. I mean, it's worked, but I think operationally, there's definitely a lot of areas that we could experience problems with that. The other thing, Russ, is we currently staff dispatch with one person, and I've been a proponent for quite some time now to begin to increase that staffing in dispatch. We've had one person on the desk since the time I started 30 years ago. And we've never increased that, and the call volume and the responsibilities of the dispatcher have only increased.
Okay.
Holbrook gives us an opportunity to have upwards of 6 dispatches available at any moment to handle anything that's taking place here in Abington. So that's another benefit that we have there. The training is better than what we've been able to afford for our dispatches here. We do what's required through the state 911 system, but I know Holbrook offers a substantial amount of more professional development from their full-time dispatches. We're working with part-time dispatches. It takes us a long time to get those part-time dispatches up and running. Whereas, if we're switching over to just a desk officer here at the station, our turnaround time would be probably just a couple weeks of training, and we would have someone here and ready to work. So there's a whole bunch of benefits to doing that. And that's just operationally. Savings wise, if you want, I'll kind of run down just briefly what the savings are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So currently, and we don't know how long these grants are going to last, but currently in talks with Holbrook, they're talking about grants funded by state 911 that would basically, so right now, I believe, and please take these numbers with a grain of salt, but I believe the fire department is paying about $190,000 annually to be over. And that's the other thing. The fire department is already over in Holbrook, and Holbrook Fire is already dispatching for them. So And if we look at like Whitman has a section of Whitman is being handled over there in Holbrook. Rockland just recently went to both to their police dispatch over in Holbrook. So when we talk about our three towns, we're already ingrained in Holbrook's dispatch center. But regardless, I believe approximately the town's paying about $190,000 a year to pay for the fire dispatch over there. Through grants, that would be free for the first 3 years. So not only would our dispatch costs be free, but that $190,000 approximately that the fire department is currently paying now, or that the town is paying, that would then resort to zero for the first 3 years. So there's a substantial savings. Obviously, year one would be 190,000 savings. Year two, we'll be receiving the service. The department wouldn't, the town wouldn't be paying 380,000 in year three. There would have ultimately been a savings of 570,000 to the town for those 3 years. Year four, it basically goes to a 50-50 split. So where the fire department would then begin to pick up their 190,000 again. But, and if you break it out, however way the town wanted to break it out, but ultimately the fire department, 190 would still be there. In year four, the police department's costs would still be zero. So it would just begin to pick up on year four. In year five, we would, the grants would pay for 25% of it. So year five, we would expect to be at 380,000 for the town, but with a $95,000 savings, we would be substantially less at that point. We would be paying only $95,000 for the police department to be over there. The other benefits to the regional dispatch is the infrastructure that they build out for us for free, again, in the town of Abington. They will, and in fact, I'm trying to set up an appointment next week or the week after to have them take a look at all of our radio infrastructure here. And although we've done a good job here maintaining our radios, there's always room for improvement, but obviously financially we've been, limited as much as we can. But they will come in and they will completely take a look at everything that we have. And if there's areas for improvement, they will purchase that free of charge. There's a potential that we could, one of the things in the management study was talking about going to electronic citations. I know Rockland, they were able to get from the grant all new mobile terminals in their cruises. I believe they got 15 mobile terminals as part of the move to go to Holbrook. And they're currently now looking at entertaining the idea of electronic citations there. So that's something that we'd be looking at. So there's just a whole realm of benefits that the town can see. And I really do believe that the service will improve to the people that are calling 911.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. So now is that essentially a definite that we're in the process of switching to Holbrook?
No, that's not. We're currently looking at it, and Scott's looking at it as well. And at some point, a decision will be made. But right now, we're kind of just, seeing what what we need, what we can get out of it. Ultimately, what the total benefit is. I mean, in face value, it looks like it's a win-win for the town. But no, the decision has not been made final at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. That was really helpful. I think that hopefully hopefully everybody believes that was worth going through, because I certainly do. Thank you so much.
Good information.
Definitely.
Okay, so I will go back to education incentive. That was there is an increase. Let me just.
Looks like it's about 8,000.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, Matt, my number, and you guys can change it on yours, would be 110,165. And that would be a increase from last year's budget of 2191.5. And that's contractual. There's nothing outside of that on the education incentive.
Is there a reason why it's not being used yet this year? Does it all come in the second half of the year?
I'm sorry, Chris?
On our report, it's showing that there's been nothing appropriated this year. The budget is 107,974, as you said, but there's been nothing expensed. Is that something that happens
Yeah,
in spring or something?
that's correct. It's paid out. I believe it's paid out twice a year, but I think sometime around now, and then I think towards the end of the fiscal year, they're paid out.
Okay, good, thank you.
Shift differential, we would remain the same. Again, that's just contractual there, and that would remain the same in the same on your sheets at 5540. Holiday budget appropriation on my sheet, that number would have to change. Instead of 105 there, it would change to 104,012. It would be a contractual increase of 3866. And again, that's a budget, I mean, that's a contractual item. Specialist stipend, to put the specialist stipend more in line to what we've been spending. And it's something that we are negotiating currently with the union as far as specialists, but to put it a little more in line to what we have been spending, we would be reducing that. I would be reducing that line item by 17,350. So let me just see if I can. Yeah, so the requested amount would be 31050. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what it is. I apologize for that.
That's okay. No,
Yeah, so
no worries.
that would be a decrease of 17,350. Vacation budget appropriation, again, to put it more in line to what we have been spending, I'm going to decrease that line item by 15,000. Sick leave budget, again, we'll leave that at the 55,000 that you guys see. That's in line with the budget and what we've been spending regarding our sick coverage. Court time, I would be dropping, let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Looks like a drop of 18,000.
Yeah, so 18, yeah, exactly. So an 18,000 drop in court time. Again, more in line to what we're spending now.
Is that because of COVID issues, or it just?
Well, it's a combination of everything, but it's more towards the fact of the chief was spending in years past more money to cover the prosecutor's job. And since we went to a civilian prosecutor's position, we've been able to substantially save the amount of overtime that he was funding to fill that court position. So it's more in line towards that as far as the reason that I'm bringing that down, as opposed to COVID, because I know eventually COVID's not going to be here and we're going to be back up. So.
And that is what we had talked to the previous chief about when he looked at bringing in the civilian position for that. So that's good to see that we're actually realizing that savings.
Yes. Sick leave incentive, the guys have been receiving that less, so I'm dropping that down $500 to put it more in line to what we have been spending. Other budget appropriations remaining at 14,000. Uniform allowance is going up $500. Again, that's contractual. In-service training budget, keeping that where it is at 100,000. No increases in that. Fuel oil budget, that's showing on this list here, but Sue has informed us that the town is going to be taking over that line item, so we'll be dropping that to 0. So that's our our electric bill or whatever that we have going on here at this building, so the town hall is going to take that over.
Hold on one second. So Sue, there won't really be a change in the budget number, right? Because I mean, in his budget number, there will be, but the overall budget will stay the same because that will just move. As far as that's concerned, that'll just be moved to.
That's correct. So we were talking about just doing like we did with electricity so that everything just comes into. We did a new, kind of like the solar thing that we did. So we get one bill for all departments. So it doesn't make any sense to try to break it out for other departments to have to pay their share. So we're, in essence, we're eventually going to bring it in all into one budget by the end of the year before the we go to town meeting.
Thank you.
And sorry to pull away from you for a second here, Chris, but Sue, where in the budget will that reside?
It's going to be in the same under town building maintenance.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Back to you.
Okay, so moving on to building repairs and maintenance. It was at 15,000. I am asking for 18,000, so a small increase in that. We have begun to see, although the building's 9 or 10 years old, we're beginning to see some of those repairs starting to add up. I mean, and me being in this position now to see some of the bills, the chief had handled those bills, and just to see that, we had to replace a hot water heater. It was close to $9,000 to do that. So I felt that it's appropriate to begin to move that figure up a little bit to anticipate some of the things beginning to break. We've also had some boiler issues here that we've been dealing with this fiscal year, and so that's why I went up 2,000 on that line item. Postage, just keeping it in line with what we're doing, I went up $500 on that. Okay, telephone went down $1,000 in telephone budget. So let me just double check that. Yeah, so I went down from, it was at 26, I went down to 25. Radio budget, keeping that where it is. No increases. Teletype budget appropriation, computer and teletypes, 45,000. No increase in that. Other purchase services, I went down to 68,000 for a $2,000 reduction. I think that's more in line to what we've been spending on that line item. Office supplies, no increase. Auxiliary budget, it went down 1,925 to put it more in line with what some of the expenses are in that line item. Custodial supplies up $500 as well. With the building getting a little bit older, it seems it was beginning to spend a little bit more on some of the custodial supplies that we're purchasing. So just a small increase on that at 500. Police gas and oil budget. I mean, we've all enjoyed the years here of some low gas prices. So I'm going down $5,000 in that. I think that we'll be safe next fiscal year, and then we'll be able to reevaluate at that point to see where our gas prices are going. But as of right now, I think a $5,000 reduction in that is appropriate.
You guys have a yearly thing with that one?
With the gas?
Yes.
The gas is purchased in bulk through the DPW, vehicle maintenance.
Yeah, there's a consortium bid price that they use, and it gets reevaluated every year.
I've just talked to a couple people recently that think maybe lower may not be the case for next year.
And I'm not confident that that's
Yeah,
likely, but
yeah, I think compared to what we have in the line item, I think I'll still be okay. I'm hoping on that. So,
yep.
Vehicle supplies, keeping that the same. Travel budget, keeping that the same, no increases. Dues and fees, an increase of $4,000. It's more in line with what we're spending in the budget. The last fiscal year, we spent $13,839 out of that budget. So going up 4,000 and that would be more in line. Training expense down $2,000. I think, again, keeping in line with what we're spending, I think that a reduction can be made there. And expense budget appropriation down 1,000 to 11,500. So that would put my would put the total at the bottom at 36,95418.71.
I'm sorry, Chief, what was that?
That's 36,95418.71.
Thank you.
And that basically is the budget. And like I said, just to kind of go back to the positions and whatever else, I think that if you look at it, the increase is although there is an increase, I think contractually itself would probably have put us over $100,000 in contractual increases when you look at all the different things on that end. But with the ability I've had to be able to cut those positions, cut some of those line items down to make it more appropriate. I think the budget is perfectly in line to what we need to do. And then at some point we can have the discussion, with Scott and decide if we're going to go regionalized. And if we do, I still think there's a savings by increasing. So just to as far as personnel, what I would be looking for is those call takers and greeters here at the police station. It would basically be an increase in personnel of 37,440, and that would fund me 48 hours of the desk officer, and it would subsequently fund me for everything, including what I already have now. But so that's what the position, we could look at that. And if we were going to go with those call takers, then I wouldn't be looking for that other 61,000 back for that 31st position. So I think it would be a win there to be able to take that one position away. The benefit of these other call takers here, it would then give me the ability to put another officer out on the road. So my net loss would be nothing.
It's 48 hours a week.
That it would be 48 hours a week, yes, to give me the coverage that I need now. And I think that's all I have. So if there's any questions or anything else about anything I went over.
Do you have capital items?
I do. So capital items, we've routinely been putting in vehicles, obviously come out of the capital plan, and we've been on a replacement plan of 3-2. So 1 year we've been purchasing 2 vehicles, the next year 3 vehicles. We are coming up in 2021 as a 3-year vehicle, three vehicle year. And the total cost for that 3 vehicles to replace would be $141,645. So 141,645. So I'd be looking to keep on that plan of 3 + 2 moving forward. And I did throw in there, I had put in there for $10,000 worth of computers. I was hoping to maybe get 10 computers out of that $10,000, but subsequent to getting a clearer estimate, I probably will only be able to get 5 computers for that, but it will begin the process. We're currently, Wayne Nolan's been doing a great job for us here and being able to, he's got a great ability to be able to rebuild computers and fix some of our things that aren't working. So we've been using him to do that, to try to limit the costs on some of our computers. A lot of our computers, the operating systems are getting old, and with, as we all know, with technology, The current technology is just not supporting those old operating systems. And our computers are getting old. They basically run 24 hours a day, at least a lot of them anyways. So I wanted to begin to start to replace them on a regular plan. So I had $10,000 in for that.
Did you do the 2 cars in this fiscal year just passed?
We did.
Okay. I know we had talked about that, and I forgot what happened.
Yeah, we did, and I have the 3 cars this time around. I have a vehicle that has 180,000 miles on it, so I wanted to replace that. I have another vehicle with 120,000 miles on it, and so I was looking at replacing that. And then I was going to I have a frontline vehicle with 100,000 miles on it that I'd be moving down to to more of a second line vehicle for those replacements.
Other questions for the chief, deputy chief?
How many computers do you need?
Well, my original plan was to up the whole station. We have about 30 workstations in the department. But again, I had put it in for 10,000, and my estimate came back at 1,700 each computer with the required software that we need. So at least that if I was moving forward with 5 computers, my 3-year plan was to begin to start to rotate them out. So if I can get those 5 computers, I can begin to replace the older ones. I'm sure that I can support a computer purchase out of the budget at some other spot. But at least that would get me started and give me a good jump moving forward for the next couple of years.
Do you think you could do a deal if we did two cars and all computers?
Do I have to answer that now?
I can tell you I wouldn't make it as a judge, but
You might want to wait until you talk to the capital committee.
You can answer it whenever you want. My only point was I obviously don't know anything about your cars, right? You know about them more, and so do your guys. The question is, if we did 2, if 3 wasn't 100% needed right now, if we could maybe push, now I'm not even saying push it off, just try to swap one thing for another that maybe you needed more. Because if you're saying all of your computers are basically antiquated, old, and have been running some outdated software, that doesn't sound like a good thing for a police department. So a car with 120,000 miles or 100,000 miles also doesn't sound like an unbelievable thing, but you have one with 180. So if we could get, maybe that one gets replaced next year and we do the computers this year instead of 3 for nothing, maybe you can get 2 and then all the computers.
Yeah, I mean, the computers are something that I need. However, we have been functioning as with them now, and it's really more of like a 3-year plan out there to say, okay, let's begin to start to replace these. But so I don't know that I'm so quick to give up that 3rd car, and it's only because one of the things we've struggled here with is retention and keeping our officers here, and I can't tell you how many times I hear that at least there's one positive that these guys express to me all the time is their equipment. And I would hate to get into a situation where we can't keep their equipment up to what they expect and what is really needed for an emergency vehicle that's running 24/7. So I'd be a little reluctant to immediately say, hey, look at let's cut that down to 3, only because I think this is more of an effect on the back end as well if I did that. But so that would be my position tonight.
Yeah, I understand. I was just trying to see if we could get all the computers right this second. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think and good idea, but I just think that I don't think it's as imperative as if I made it sound that much that I need to replace them all now. And that's why I put it on kind of like a 3-year plan to say, hey, look, let's take the ones that really need to be replaced now. The other thing too is with the computers, I am building out as I reorganize the department. There's actually more desk space that's going to be needed and the offices are going to need more of a computer. So I don't think I'm in dire straits now that I need to immediately replace everything. But it's definitely if I can begin to start to think about that, to start to replace some of them. And then if something needs to be tweaked in the years to come that we are are in a situation where there's a dire need to replace everything that we have, then I would do that. But I don't think I'm at that position. I think the computers that we do have here have been bought in different years and things like that. So we got some that are older and some that are newer. So I think that I can still get by with what that $10,000 in the capital plan.
Okay,
But thank you. I don't want to shut that down. I think it's a good idea, but
thanks.
Where are we at in the contract? What year are we in the contract for the police?
they are negotiating now. And so I think they expire this June 30th.
Okay. So they're currently in the third
year.
So they're in their third year.
Okay.
Yes.
Other questions?
Very good. Very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely good first time flying solo. Doing
Thanks.
well.
That's all right. I can take it if you want to. You want to tell me the truth? I'm okay with it.
All right, Chris, you ready for me?
Oh no. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sue.
Now, if you could just like either swing by or send me your spreadsheet so that I can update what they're looking at for the future. So I know you talked about a lot of different changes that were presented from Chief Majensky, but if you can give it to me so I can update Vadar. So I'm planning this meeting right now. I just sent them departments that were being presented tonight, but they want the whole document. So it would be nice to, if you could just share with me where your changes are.
Okay, I will definitely do that. I'll get that off to you, Sue. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chris, one of the things from past years that I know I've heard a lot of feedback from people who watch the meetings is just some of the highlights for the department from the past year. I don't know if you've got any on the tip of your brain there that you might want to share, but
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So obviously this was a tough year. There were not a lot of highlights to be had this year. We were kind of in a mode of where we were just trying to make sure that everyone stayed healthy and that we were able to still provide the services that the town needed. So, on that end of things, it's been a learning experience for us here. Probably if I had to point to a highlight, it probably couldn't have come at a better time as to have that management study done and given me the opportunity to try to fix the things that they did identify out of that management study. So, with that, I think that was completed early spring timeframe. And then I began working on those changes in early fall, maybe around September or so. And since then, we've been systematically, with the help of all the officers here, we've been systematically knocking off the recommendations that were made in the management study. So really, this year has kind of been like a building year. In order to kind of restructure things. There's a lot of thought I'm putting into. I guess I'll have more to offer next year when I get into talking about restructuring and talking about the specialty positions that I anticipate being able to make. I'd like to make a dedicated traffic officer. If there isn't one thing that this town needs is a traffic officer, and so I'm hoping to be able to do that. I'm hoping to be able to build. It's a priority of mine, and probably my number one priority is to build the detective unit because we as a police department, these guys have done a tremendous job being able to multitask their patrol duties with their detective duties. When I say detective duties, they're required to do investigations on their own, and that can become problematic sometimes. And I look at the jobs that they do. And I'm really in awe at the work that they perform. But ultimately, for us to move forward as a police department, we need a detective unit. So I anticipate doing that in this next fiscal year. I anticipate, as one of the management studies of restructuring the whole chain of command, basically, in the whole organizational chart. So I'm excited about all that stuff. There's a lot of good things that are happening. But this last year, it was really just a rebuilding, kind of taking a look at ourselves, seeing where we can come up with improvements. And it was probably a good time for that because we as I'm trying to complete my annual report, Sue, I know you told me I need to get that done, so I'm going to. I'm still working on that, but I can say overall, from this year to last year, we've seen a 19% reduction in crime, and I'd like to attribute it all to the offices. I can attribute some of that to the offices and the good work that they do, but ultimately, probably COVID played a larger role in some of our reductions in those areas. But so it was a good time for us to kind of just kick back, reevaluate ourselves and building year here. So
That's great.
I saw on the news recently that you're getting a grant for a canine.
Oh yeah, thank you. I forgot about the canine. So yes, so we did get the grant, and it's basically a soup to nuts for the next 3 years that will effectively cover almost all expenses with the canine. So that's a huge, one of the things that the offices here have been talking about is specialty positions, and for us to be able to start to offer them specialty positions, it's a huge incentive to keep them here. And it's a lot harder to train someone and fund new positions than it is to make sure that I work hard to keep the people that I have here. But one of those things is having a canine. And we had an officer here, Officer John Sayers, and he's been bombarding me with paperwork to sign for his grants, but he's done a tremendous job to get money. And so I anticipate hopefully in the next couple months we'll have a dog running around. So that's another good thing that we're working on, and I can talk about that next year. You jumping the gun on me.
Hey, I have somebody who wants to be the dog handler, like hugger, because the dog still needs to be with people and not be just a canine dog. So if you're interested in a dog breeder, ask the Board of Health. You were
Don't let them ruin the dog.
Yeah.
Dog.
Now, Sue, I got to tell you, the last dog I was quick to learn that the dog was a tool, and I don't mean to sound not compassionate about that, but these dogs are definitely working dogs. So I can tell you right now, I will not be hugging the dog. So
Very highly trained animals.
I've yet to meet one that I would hug.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring mine in tomorrow.
Yeah, so a lot of good things. It's really positive. I think things are looking good, and I'm excited to move forward. So, I just one last thing. I appreciate your patience with me because I'm a little all over the place with the budget. But again, if there's any questions, just reach out to me and let me know.
Absolutely. Anyone else have questions?
From a note taking, you were awesome.
Thanks, Deb.
All right, if there are no other questions, we can let you go and get back to your evening.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy.
All right. Stopping my share. I'm not going to bother sharing the agenda again. Do we have any liaison reports? See a lot of heads shaking.
Can I ask a question?
Scott, you can ask away.
What do you guys? What exactly are you liaising to? Or I don't recall.
So we have
the time that I've
liaison.
been meeting with you, like who's liaison to what, or
So we have liaisons for each department, and they check in with the department heads, or the department heads reach out to them to let them know if there's anything that needs to be brought up. And also sometimes with some of the committees, like when the school building committee was a thing, when we were preparing to build the school, we had a representative from our board on that committee who would routinely report in on what was going on, what the progress was, where things were at. But very frequently the department liaisons will check in with the department heads in sort of the normal years, not this year. Maybe set up a tour of the department for the committee so that we can see what they do and get a more visual and hands-on feel for where the money is going and what it's being used for. But also just if something's coming up, I know The building inspector has certainly reached out in many times over the years, just as an example, through his liaison to say, hey, this is what's going on. Might need to discuss something or give you a heads up before we come in and talk to you.
If that department, if you're the liaison for a certain department and a question comes up during the meeting, that
Yep.
person will reach out and get an answer for the group.
Yep.
Okay. No, it's kind of what I figured. It's sort of the model that I was used to in Duxbury. Mostly that liaison would meet early on in the budget process there with the department heads. And I wasn't sure if that's how you did it in the past. And it's just because of COVID, you're not doing it. And
We have done that in the past. When I know back when Rick Franey was on, he and I kind of covered for people that were liaisons that weren't able to make budget meetings, but we did in the past. We have the liaison has gone with their department to their budget review, or when the process starts.
maybe better years ahead, that'll happen again.
I'm gonna say that predates my time on the board.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was a good model there. Like I said, what we would do is there would be one representative and he would come in and, you would dread it somewhat to some extent to go and explain, because, especially if it was a lot of times a newer person might come along with them and you'd pretty much explain everything that you do to them in a day-to-day basis and what goes on in your department. But it was useful because it did help have someone who could help answer the questions that, were, or would come in and help the department anticipate the questions that were going to be coming their way.
I think it's beneficial too, especially when we do have newer members. They get a real understanding by going to a budget meeting like that, or different things. They're able to get a better understanding of that department. I learned a lot from going to meetings like that, especially early on. Just things that you wouldn't, think of, but why a certain department needed X amount of dollars or whatever it was. So it's definitely beneficial to the group as a whole and the individuals.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. Correspondence is next. Deb, did you check the mailbox?
There was only the budget, listing of salaries or whatever and expenditures. And then there was something from the Mass Municipal, but I didn't open the envelope.
Okay. Thank you.
I will check it tomorrow and let you know what it is.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks.
And then minutes. We actually have 2 sets of minutes to report on. Joe's, nobody gave any comments on Joe's meeting minutes that he had sent out. So we have those to vote on. And then Deb provided notes from our last meeting.
They were all phenomenal.
I agree. Good work by both of you.
Oh.
Do we have any motions?
All right, what's the first one we're doing? What date?
So the first one, hang on, I'm getting the exact date.
Mine was January 6th.
I believe Joe's was minutes for the October 28th meeting.
Matt, was I at that meeting?
So let me get the attendance on that one. Myself, Russ, Barbara, Chris, Justin, and Greg.
Thank you. Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
A motion from Barbara and a second from
Who was
Russ.
the second?
Russ.
Oh, thanks. All right, so who wasn't there?
Joe, Katie, and Sean were not there.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes from October 28th? Without any, all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining? All right, They are approved. And then next we have the meeting minutes for our January 6th meeting. And attendance for that was Katie, Barbara, and Sean were not there. So Barbara, you're the only one that can't make a motion on these.
Motion to accept. That's
Motion
good.
Second.
Chris, and a second from Joe. Is
I
there any-
missed the first. Who was first?
Motion was from Chris,
Thank you.
second from Joe. Is there any discussion on the January 6th meeting minutes? All right, without any, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for the 6th of January? All those opposed, abstaining? They are approved. Thank you all.
Can someone send me the 1028 so I can post them in the library?
Yep, I will send that to you.
When I can get into the library.
I will send those to you. Hang on a second. Right, I've sent those to you, Deb. And then our next meeting will be next Wednesday, February 3rd. I'm just gonna quickly check we have up for next week. Next week, we have the Treasurer's Department, the DPW, and the Council on Aging. And that is all we have on our agenda for tonight. Anything anyone else would
DPW
like
and
to?
Council on Aging are switching their time, so DPW is last.
Okay, that does make sense.
Yes.
And I'd just like to say, I did like that format that you sent where we could see what they've actually spent this year, as well as the budget last year and this year. That was helpful. You may regret that I saw it.
You've been requesting it.
It's gonna come and bite somebody in the butt.
We appreciate it, Sue. It's definitely helpful for us. Any other comments, questions, motions?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning? All those opposed, abstaining? It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.